I spent my whole life suffocating, only to die of cancer. When I opened my eyes, I found myself back at 18. The scumbag, my childhood sweetheart, the idol of the entire school, was waiting for me to sacrifice my future for him. I smiled. In this lifetime, who would still give up everything for you? I turned around, aced the entrance exams, and entered the best police academy, where I met someone who truly treated me like treasure. Years later, the scumbag, with tears in his eyes, asked me, why? I flashed my engagement ring and hugged the man beside me, a police god. Because in this life I only love my country, and the pillars of my country. In this life, the last thing I remember was staring at the hospital ceiling, that cold, sterile white, and the smell, that rotten stench that no disinfectant could mask, oozing from my very bones. It was unbearable. There was a buzzing in my ears like I was underwater. Someone was crying? Or laughing? I couldn't make it out. Honestly, I didn't care to listen anymore. My miserable, failed life was finally coming to an end. Cancer. Late stage. The doctor said it was too late to save me. 48 years old. Doesn't sound too old, does it? But my body felt like a decaying log hollowed out by worms. A slight touch, and I crumbled to dust. Cold, a deep, bone-chilling cold spreading from my heart. It was colder than the air conditioning in this hospital room. I tried to move my fingers, but I didn't even have enough strength for that. My consciousness felt like a kite with a broken string drifting aimlessly. Some fragmented images kept crashing into my mind, out of control. It was Jason Miller, the man I had loved for 30 years. I remembered the first time he held my hand, under the old locust tree on our high school campus. His palm was warm and his voice was hoarse. Rachel, wait for me to graduate, then we'll get married. Back then his eyes sparkled, reflecting my shadow. What happened after that? He went to Changsha and enrolled in the prestigious National Defense University. I could have gone to Beijing, but, for him, I secretly changed my university choice to a regular one near his city. I thought this was what it meant to sacrifice for love. Ah! Foolish! Later, he joined the army, climbing the ranks quickly. I followed him, moving from city to city, like a vine clinging to him. But he grew busier, coming home later and later, and he started to smell different. A faint but pungent scent of perfume. I asked him about it, just once. What did he say? Oh, he lit a cigarette, and through the smoke, his face was blurred. Rachel Foster, when did you become so unreasonable? I'm out here working my ass off. Not so you can turn into a nagging wife checking up on me. Nagging wife. Those words were like two ice cold knives, stabbing the last bit of my questions back into my gut. From that day on, I never asked him again. I gave him 2 sons. I suffered severe morning sickness with the first, but he was away on a business trip. With the second, I had complications, almost dying on the operating table. He was away on a training exercise. Every time I called, his aide would answer, "Ma'am, the chief is busy." Busy. That word became the strongest wall in our marriage. On one side of the wall, I lived alone, raising our kids, taking care of his parents, managing his endless connections. On the other side, he was busy building his bright future. Then, Madeline Stone appeared. She was a new recruit under him, a delicate, scheming girl, the kind that needed protection. Jason Miller took good care of her. So well that I started receiving photos from unknown numbers. Sometimes, Jason Miller would be seen serving her food, or draping his jacket over her shoulders at a company dinner. I took the photos and confronted him. For the first time, he really lost his temper with me. He threw a cup. Rachel Foster. Are you following me? Have you lost your mind? Madeline is just a girl working hard outside. I'm just looking out for her. Can you stop being so dirty-minded? Dirty-minded. So, this is what it sounds like when your heart shatters. After that, the photos stopped coming. Instead, my two sons began mentioning her more and more. Mom, Madeline Anti dances really well. At the last performance, Dad even gave her flowers. Mom, Madeline Anti makes better sweet and sour ribs than you. Dad said so. Piece by piece, my heart was ground to dust by these words. Until 3 months ago, when I collapsed at home and was rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. I called Jason Miller. He said, "I'm in a meeting. We'll talk later." I texted my sons. The older one replied, "Mom, I'm with Madeline Anti picking out wedding dresses. Dad says we need to make the wedding grand. We're so busy. Don't go to the hospital so often, it's bad luck." The younger one didn't respond. That night, Jason Miller came to the hospital, standing at the door of my room without coming in. His brows furrowed in irritation. "Rachel, what did you do to yourself?" He sounded impatient. "I'm busy with the wedding preparations. If you need money, talk to Noah, but grant his aid. Have him pay you." The wedding. He was marrying Madeline Stone. While I lay on my deathbed with terminal cancer, my husband was happily preparing to marry someone else. And my two sons, the ones I bore and raised for over 20 years, were busy running around preparing for their, Madeline Anti's, wedding. I wanted to laugh out loud, but I coughed up blood, staining the pristine white sheets. Jason Miller turned his face away in disgust. "Look at you, just focus on your treatment, don't think so much. Madeline. She's fragile, she can't handle any stress." At that moment, the last shred of hope inside me snapped. After that, I lay alone in the hospital room, watching as the IV drip slowly infused into my veins, like a countdown to the end of my life. The nurses looked at me with pity in their eyes. I knew I was dying. It wasn't fair. If there's a next life, Jason Miller, Madeline Stone, and my two ungrateful sons, none of them will get away with it. My consciousness sank completely into darkness. "Rachel, Rachel, wake up. The math teacher's bald head is practically shining, and you're still asleep." A low voice urgently called out to me, followed by a gentle poke in my arm. I snapped my eyes open. Bright sunlight poured in through the window, blinding me, making my eyes burn. It wasn't the cold, sterile light of a hospital. Instead, I smelled the faint scent of books and the wood of the desk warmed by the sun. It wasn't the nauseating smell of disinfectants. I turned my head in a daze. Brooklyn James, my desk mate with her baby-faced round cheeks, leaned in close to me, her big eyes filled with concern. "My lady, did you have a nightmare? You're sweating buckets." I looked down at my hands. Smooth, firm skin with a healthy pinkish glow. My nails were in perfect shape. Not the skeletal, needle-pocked hands I'd seen in the hospital. I pinched my thigh hard. Hiss. It hurt. This wasn't a dream. I looked up and glanced at the teacher's podium. The math teacher was turned away, drawing complex functions on the blackboard. His bald head shone under the light, looking unusually noticeable in the sunlight. The calendar beside the blackboard clearly showed June 30, 2005. I was reborn. Back to being 18? Senior year? There was less than a month left before the college entrance exam. And just one step away from the fateful moment when I met Jason Miller, fell for him, and ruined my entire life. An overwhelming wave of euphoria hit me like a tsunami, nearly choking me. Heaven, you finally opened your eyes. Rachel, are you okay? You're going from pale to flushed. Brooklyn James reached out to feel my forehead, worry written all over her face. I grabbed her hand so tightly it made her jump in surprise. "Brooklyn." My voice trembled with excitement. "It's 2005, right?" "Yeah. Are you out of your mind?" Brooklyn James looked at me, confused. "Jason Miller." I nearly gritted my teeth as I spoke his name. "Where is he?" Jason, the handsome guy? Brooklyn James pointed toward the front right corner of the classroom. He's right over there, paying attention in class. TSK, TSK, serious guys are always the most handsome. I followed her gaze. By the window, a clean-cut boy in a blue and white school uniform sat upright, his side profile sharp and elegant. Sunlight cast a small shadow on his thick lashes. It was the 18-year-old Jason Miller. Clean, dazzling, the kind of boy that would appear in every girl's dream of youth. In my past life, it was his appearance that bewitched me, making me throw away my future. But now, all I felt was a surge of disgust. Disgusting. So damn disgusting. As if he sensed my intense gaze, Jason Miller suddenly turned his head and looked at me. His eyes held a trace of confusion, as if wondering why I was staring at him. In my past life, I would have blushed and had my heart race at this look. But now? I met his gaze and twisted my lips into a cold, sarcastic smile, then casually looked away without any hesitation. Jason Miller was clearly stunned, his brow furrowing as he tried to make sense of my reaction. I didn't look at him again. Trash should stay in the trash can. Even a second more of looking at him would dirty my eyes. The bell rang for the end of class. As the math teacher grabbed his notes and walked out of the classroom, Jason Miller stood up and walked toward me. The class began to tease. Everyone knew that Jason Miller, the model student on campus idol, and I, Rachel Foster, were childhood sweethearts. It was a given that we were a couple. In my past life, I enjoyed this teasing, feeling sweet inside. Now? I just wanted to throw up. Rachel. Jason Miller stopped in front of my desk, his voice clear. What happened just now? You look so pale. I slowly packed up my pencil case without lifting my head. It's nothing. Just a nightmare. My voice was as flat as plain water. A nightmare? What was it about? He seemed to want to show some concern. I finally raised my head and looked at him, my eyes cold, like I was looking at a stranger. I dreamt that I married you. Jason Miller's face immediately turned bright red. The teasing from around the class grew louder. He looked awkward, but deep in his eyes was a hidden gleam of pride, like he was secretly pleased. You? You're just kidding, right? I smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. And then, I got cancer in my 40s and died. While I was dying, you were busy marrying your little mistress, Madeline Stone. The two sons I bore for you. They were running around preparing your new house. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough. The room went silent in an instant. The smiles on the classmates' faces froze. The air felt like it had thickened. Jason Miller's face drained of color. His expression turned pale as he looked at me like it was the first time he'd ever seen me. His eyes were wide with shock and a trace of offended anger. Rachel Foster. His voice rumbled with restrained fury. What the hell are you talking about? Cancer? Madeline Stone? Are you crazy? Yeah, I've gone crazy. I stood up, my height only reaching his shoulder, but my presence was in no way inferior. I stared into his eyes, speaking clearly, word by word, with unshakable conviction. So, Jason Miller, stay away from me. From today on, Rachel Foster and you bridges will stay bridges, and roads will stay roads. You go to your National Defense University, and I'll go to my Beijing Public University. We'll be miles apart, never to meet again. With that, I grabbed my backpack, bypassed the frozen statue of Jason Miller, and walked straight out of the classroom. I left behind a room full of stunned classmates and a Jason Miller, his face ashen, fists clenched in anger. Brooklyn James snapped out of her daze after a few seconds and quickly grabbed her backpack to chase after me. Rachel, oh my God! Wait up, what's going on with you? Did you take some wrong meds or something? Brooklyn James caught up to me, breathless and wide-eyed as if she'd seen a ghost. I stopped walking and looked at her. The sunlight was so warm, shining down on me. Being alive. was so damn good. I took a deep breath, inhaling the freedom in the air, and gave Brooklyn James my first real smile since being reborn, a bright, genuine smile. I didn't take any meds. I just emptied out all the nonsense from my head. On the way home, Brooklyn James, like a curious child, bombarded me with questions. Rachel, what's going on? Did you and Jason Miller have a fight? But that's impossible, you two have never even argued. And what was that about cancer and Madeline Stone? That was kind of scary. Beijing Public University? Didn't you say you wanted to go to school near Jason? Why all of a sudden Beijing? I linked my arm with hers, feeling lighter than I had in ages. Brooklyn, do you trust me? Of course I do, Brooklyn James answered without hesitation. Good. Then listen to me today, I said seriously, looking her in the eye. First, Jason Miller is not the right person for me. Being with him would only lead to disaster. Second, if Madeline Stone ever shows up again, stay away from her. That woman is poison. Third, I'm going to Beijing. I need to get away from here, as far away from Jason Miller as possible. Brooklyn James was a bit taken aback by my serious tone, blinking a few times. But, Jason Miller. He's so great, and he's been really nice to you. Great? I scoffed. The little good he showed me was nothing more than childhood habits, or maybe just his vanity from enjoying being adored. Brooklyn, real love isn't like this. Real love is about not letting the other person's offer even the slightest bit of harm, about wanting to bring the best of the world to them. It's not like how Jason Miller treated me in my past life, summoned when needed, cast aside when not. A backdrop when required, a stumbling block when inconvenient. But your families, they've always expected you two to be together. Brooklyn James still couldn't quite understand. So it's up to me to change this, I said with unwavering resolve. The first step is the college entrance exam choices. When we got home, my parents were busy in the kitchen. The smell of food wafted through the air, filling the house with the long-missed scent of home. Rachel's back, wash up and come eat. I made your favorite sweet and sour ribs. My mom peeked out, smiling warmly. My eyes instantly welled up. In my past life I had stubbornly followed Jason Miller and broke my parents' hearts countless times. Later, when my marriage fell apart, they worried themselves sick. My father even ended up hospitalized with high blood pressure because of all the stress from my choices. Dad, Mom? I walked over, hugging my mom from behind and burying my face in her warm back. She paused for a moment, then laughed softly. Oh, what's this? Our little princess is being affectionate. I just wanted to hug you, I murmured. At dinner I casually mentioned, Dad, Mom, I've decided I want to apply to Beijing Public University. Clink. My dad's chopsticks dropped onto the table. Mom looked at me surprised. Beijing? Public University? Rachel, didn't you say you wanted to apply to a university closer to home, or go somewhere near Jason? Jason Miller was set to attend the National Defense University in Changsha, and both families had casually assumed I'd apply to a nearby school. I took a bite of my food, speaking casually but firmly. Oh, I changed my mind. I think being a police officer is really cool, protecting justice, fighting crime. Beijing Public University is top tier, and I want to try for it. Dad picked up his chopsticks, thought for a moment, then said, Public University. It's a good school. But it's far, and the training is tough. Are you sure you can handle it? I can. I immediately responded, Dad, I'm not a child anymore. I've thought this through. This is my choice. Mom exchanged a glance with Dad, her expression uncertain. But what about Jason? Mom? I set my bowl down and grew serious. I'm choosing my college for my own future. It has nothing to do with Jason Miller. From now on, please don't involve him in any of my decisions. Dad and Mom exchanged a look, clearly surprised by my attitude. I seized the moment. Dad, Mom, I know you're only thinking of me. But please trust me, I'm serious this time. Jason Miller and I are just classmates now, and nothing more will ever happen. I hope you'll support me in this. Dad remained silent for a while, then nodded. All right. Your path, your choice. As long as you're sure, I'll support you. Mom sighed and nodded. Sigh. Kids these days, you make your own decisions. But the college entrance exam is a big deal. Think it through carefully. I've thought it through, I smiled. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom. With that, I felt like a huge weight had lifted from my heart after talking to my parents. That evening I locked myself in my room and spread out my brand new study materials. With less than a month until the college entrance exam, I might have the memories of my past life, but it's been so long that I've forgotten most of the material. I had to give it my all. For this brand new life, I would fight for it. The next day when I returned to school, the atmosphere was noticeably different. As soon as I entered the classroom, the usual buzz of chatter quickly quieted down. Countless eyes, some curious, some judgmental, were turned toward me. I remained unfazed and walked straight to my seat. Brooklyn James leaned in and whispered, Rachel, you really made a name for yourself yesterday. Now the whole class is talking about how you dumped Jason, the school's idol. I shrugged nonchalantly. Let them talk. It's the truth. But Jason Miller looks really upset today. Brooklyn James pointed subtly toward the front. Jason Miller was sitting at his desk, his back straight, but there was an unmistakable "don't come near me" vibrating from him. He had never been like this before. Looks like my words from yesterday really hit a nerve. After all, Jason Miller, who's always been treated like royalty, especially by me, his childhood friend who adored him, had never been publicly slapped in the face like this before. He probably thinks I'm just throwing a tantrum and will get over it in a few days. How naive. I spent the entire day pretending he was invisible. I focused on my lessons and kept practicing problems. During breaks he tried several times to talk to me, but I skillfully avoided him. Either I'd go to the bathroom or I'd pull Brooklyn James into a discussion about the problems. His face grew darker and darker. When the bell rang at the end of the day, I packed my things and was about to leave. Rachel Foster. Jason Miller finally blocked my way at the door, his voice low. We need to talk. The students around us slowed down, straining to hear. I looked up, calmly meeting his gaze. Talk about what? I'm busy. I'm in a hurry. He took a deep breath, clearly trying to suppress his anger. Just 5 minutes. Let's go to the playground. No need, I refused firmly. If you have something to say, say it here. Jason Miller's fists clenched. He probably never felt this embarrassed before. What did you mean by going our separate ways? And who is this Madeline Stone? He fixed his gaze on me. Looks like my crazy talk from yesterday still lingered in his mind. I smiled, tinged with sarcasm. It means exactly what I said. Jason, from now on, we'll walk our own paths. As for Madeline Stone, I paused deliberately, watching his pupils contract before slowly continuing. You'll find out soon enough. Maybe she's your soulmate. With that, I didn't look at his rigid face again. I just walked past him, slipping out the door. Rachel Foster, he shouted from behind, his voice strained. Have you fallen for someone else? I almost laughed aloud. Look at that, the confidence of men. He'd rather believe I'm falling for someone else than admit that I'd simply seen through him and no longer want him. I didn't even bother to turn my head, just waved my hand dismissively. Believe whatever you want. Goodbye. No. Scratch that goodbye forever. In the days that followed, I threw myself into a frenzied study routine. Other than eating and sleeping, every moment was spent buried in books. Jason Miller tried reaching out a few times, even asking his mother to call mine, subtly inquiring whether we were having problems. I effortlessly brushed it off. Mom, it's the last stage of high school. I need to focus on my studies. No time for anything else. Mom probably sensed my determination and didn't push further. The weekend before the college entrance exam, the school gave us a break to rest. I went to the largest bookstore in the city, planning to buy a couple of the latest practice books. Just as I stopped in front of a bookshelf, a familiar figure appeared beside me. It was Jason Miller. He looked a little thinner, his eyes filled with complicated emotions as he stared at me. Rachel, do we really have to do this? His voice carried a trace of fatigue, and was that a hint of hurt? I couldn't help but sneer. He felt hurt now. After everything I went through in my past life, this was nothing. Jason Miller, what a coincidence, I said, my tone distant. It's not a coincidence. I asked Brooklyn James and she said you might be here. He looked at the Beijing Public University exam papers in my hands. Are you really planning to apply there? What else? I raised an eyebrow. With your grades, you could easily get into a better university in Beijing. Public university. It's too tough, and the career prospects are limited, he tried to convince me. I like it, and I'm willing to do it, I interrupted him. How tough it is, that's my problem. You don't need to worry about it. He paused, his face darkening. After a moment of silence, he lowered his voice. Rachel, if I've done something wrong in the past, I'm sorry. Please, can't we just be okay? Why can't we be fine? Sorry? It was too late for an apology now. The Rachel Foster inside me had long since died in that cold hospital room at the age of 40. You're not the problem, I said, looking at him with a calm, expressionless gaze. I'm the problem. I'm the one who doesn't know my place and can't live up to someone like you, Jason Miller. So, please, for the sake of our past, let me go. Leave me alone, will you? Jason Miller's face turned completely pale. He probably never expected me to speak to him with such indifference, even with a hint of contempt. Rachel, you, his lips moved. But he didn't know what else to say. I had no patience left to continue this. Jason Miller, I've made myself very clear. If you still care about the fact that we grew up together, then please, from now on, stay away from me. Don't come looking for me, don't call me, don't text me. Let's pretend we never knew each other. I held the exam papers to my chest, as though forming a barrier between us. Good luck with everything. I hope you find your ideal partner soon, but that person will never be me. With that, I turned and walked briskly toward the checkout counter. I could feel his eyes still fixed on me, burning with shock, anger, and a hint of panic, one he probably hadn't even realized was there. He was panicking, because he was finally realizing that he might actually lose me, the backup, who had always been there, easily within his reach. Typical male nature. Too bad though. I'm done serving you in this life. The day of the college entrance exam was clear and sunny. I walked into the exam hall with an unusual sense of calm. In my past life, I had been so preoccupied with how Jason Miller would do on the exam that I let my nerves affect my performance. But this time, my focus was solely on the test paper and on my future. The sound of the pen scratching on paper was the prologue to my new life. When the bell signaling the end of the exam rang, I let out a long, relieved breath. It was over. And it had just begun. Walking out of the exam hall, the crowd was a sea of faces. My parents were anxiously looking for me at the entrance, and as soon as they saw me, they immediately rushed over. Rachel, how did it go? Mom asked nervously. I smiled, confidence shining through. I think it went well. I should have no trouble with the queue line, and as for Beijing Public University, I'm determined to get in. Dad patted my shoulder with satisfaction. Good. Now that the exam's done, don't think about it. Come on, we'll go have a big meal to celebrate. Just as we were about to leave, a voice called out from behind. Uncle, Auntie. It was Jason Miller. His parents were with him. He looked at me, his gaze complex. Rachel, how did it go? Before I could answer, Mom smiled and replied, Rachel said she did well. She's planning to apply to Beijing Public University. Jason Miller's mom's expression shifted slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. Public university sounds good. But becoming a police officer might be a bit too tough for a girl. Our Jason is still thinking about applying to the National Defense University. It's more stable. Jason Miller glanced at his mom, his brows furrowing ever so slightly, but he didn't say anything. I couldn't be bothered with their little game of words. I turned to my parents and said, Dad, Mom, let's go. I'm hungry. All right, Dad replied. I didn't spare Jason Miller another glance. On the day we had to fill out our college applications, I decisively wrote China People's Public Security University in the first choice box. When the homeroom teacher saw my application, she was a little surprised and called me in for a chat to confirm my decision. I was firm in my response. After leaving her office, I saw Jason Miller waiting in the hallway. Rachel, you really applied to public university? He couldn't hide his disappointment, and there was a touch of anger in his voice. I nodded. You really hate me that much? You want to keep your distance? He took a step closer, his voice strained. I stepped back to keep my distance, my tone cool. Jason Miller, I've told you many times. What major I choose is none of your business. Stop reading into things. Stop reading into things? He seemed hurt by those words and let out a cold laugh. Rachel Foster, we've grown up together, and after all these years, you're just going to cut ties like this. Are you really so heartless? Heartless? Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I looked him straight in the eye, my gaze as cold as ice. Jason Miller, compared to what you're going to do in the future, my heartlessness is nothing. He froze, clearly not understanding what I meant. I didn't feel like explaining. Move aside. I'm going home. I walked past him, not sparing him another look. Behind me, I didn't hear any footsteps. He must have finally come to terms with reality. The day the admission letters came, my family was overjoyed. I was accepted to Beijing Public University, just as I had hoped. Mom and Dad couldn't stop smiling and immediately called relatives and friends to share the news. As for Jason Miller, he, without question, was admitted to the National Defense University. Our parents had initially wanted to throw a joint celebration for both of us, but my mom and I politely declined. Now, my mom fully supported me. To everyone else, she just said, the kid is grown up and has her own ideas. We respect her choice. After receiving my acceptance letter, the first thing I did was change all my contact details. I canceled my old phone number and QQ account and applied for new ones. I also made sure to tell Brooklyn James that she was not to give my new number to Jason Miller. I was cutting all ties with him, once and for all. The whole summer was filled with productivity. I learned how to drive, got my driver's license, worked out, and began studying the university courses in advance. During this time, Jason Miller tried reaching out to me in every way he could. He waited downstairs at my building, left messages on my old QQ account, and even had his mom call mine. But I easily brushed it all off. I ignored him completely. When he came to wait downstairs at my building, I slipped out through the back door or simply didn't leave the house. When he left messages, I didn't even bother to look at them, and just deleted them immediately. When his mom called, my mom would say exactly what I instructed her to. Oh, Rachel. After the exam, she went on a graduation trip with her classmates. She's not at home, a new phone number. She just changed it, and I haven't even memorized it yet. After a few attempts, the Miller family must have realized my stance and gradually stopped bothering me. 1 week before the new semester, I bought a flight ticket to Beijing. I didn't tell anyone the exact departure time. I packed my suitcase and quietly headed to the airport alone. As the plane soared into the sky, and I watched the city I had lived in for 18 years shrink beneath me, my heart soared too. Goodbye past. Beijing. Here I come. A new life, here I come. University life was completely different from high school. The strict discipline and tough training at public university were intense. Every day started with early morning exercises, drills, physical training, combat, and shooting, with classes packed back to back. Many of my classmates complained endlessly, but I enjoyed every bit of it. The sense of fulfillment that came from working hard and training made me truly feel alive and growing stronger. I worked hard at training, studied diligently, and always ranked among the top students. I also joined the school Senate club, where I vented all the frustration and anger I had bottled up in my past life through punching bags in the training grounds. I became tough and fierce, and quickly gained a reputation among my peers. No one treated me like a fragile flower needing protection anymore. Here I was a comrade who could fight alongside everyone else. I almost forgot about Jason Miller entirely if it were for the occasional appearance he made. Like during the Chinese New Year. I stayed in Beijing during my freshman winter break, taking up part-time work instead of going home. Partly to gain social experience, but mostly to avoid running into him. On New Year's Eve, I was in the cafeteria, making dumplings and watching the Spring Festival Gala, with a few other students who stayed on campus when my phone rang. It was a local number I didn't recognize. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? There was a pause on the other end before a voice I had nearly forgotten came through. Rachel, it's me. It was Jason Miller. His voice was a little hoarse, and the background noise was quiet. My heart sank. How did he get my new number? What's up? I asked, my tone freezing. I went back to my hometown. I heard from Auntie that you didn't come home for the new year. His voice was tentative. Yeah, I'm busy with a part-time job, I replied succinctly. Are you okay in Beijing? He asked, trying to make small talk. I'm fine, don't worry. I've got to go, my classmates need me for the dumplings. I interrupted him without hesitation. Wait, he hurriedly said, Rachel, I want to see you. Just for a moment, is that okay? There's something I want to say to you in person. See me? Say what? Apologize? Tell me he regrets everything? Admit he still likes me? Too bad I wasn't the same girl who could be sweet-talked by a few words anymore. No need, I said coldly. Jason Miller, I thought I made myself clear. There's nothing more to say between us. Rachel, don't be like this. His voice took on a pleading tone, even a little desperate. Just for a moment. I'll come to your place tomorrow. Come to see me? I narrowed my eyes. Suit yourself, I said, laughing with a hint of mischief. But I think you're going to waste your trip. I bought a flight ticket for tonight. I'm going to Sanya. Right now, I'm already at the airport. There was a long, dead silence on the other end of the line. I could imagine his expression. This was probably priceless. Sanya? His voice was dry. Yep, sunshine, beaches, the sea. Definitely better than staying in this cold place, seeing people I don't want to see, don't you think? I said brightly. Anyway, I've got to go, my flight's boarding. Happy New Year, by the way. Oh, and don't call this number again. I'll be changing it once I get back. With that, without waiting for him to respond, I hung up the phone and quickly blocked the number. Who was that, talking for so long? A cheerful voice asked from beside me. I looked up. It was Owen Parker. He was my senior, the president of the Santa Club, and a genius in criminal investigation. Handsome, capable, and full of energy, he was the heartthrob of countless girls at public university. He had probably overheard part of the conversation while kneading dough next to me. No one, I said, shoving my phone back into my pocket, dusting my hands off with flour, and smiling brightly. Just an irrelevant scam call? A scam call? Owen raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but he didn't press the issue. Instead, he handed me a rolling pin. Come on, Rachel Foster, no slacking. Let's roll out the dough. Everyone's waiting. Roger that. I grabbed the rolling pin and got back to work. I met Owen Parker by accident, and in quite a dramatic way. Not long after school started, one evening I took a shortcut back to my dorm from the library, passing through a dimly lit path lined with trees. I ran into two drunk, troublemaking guys from off campus who blocked my way. Had it been the old me, I would have been scared out of my wits. But now, after a few months of training at Public University, my hands were itching. Without a second thought, I threw my backpack aside and assumed a fighting stance. The two thugs, seeing a small girl daring to resist, sneered and swaggered over. Then, with a quick combination of punches and a side kick, I took one of them down. The other froze for a moment, cursing loudly as he charged at me. I was about to face him when a figure dashed over faster, taking the thug down in just a few moves and pinning him to the ground. "Are you okay?" The person turned around and revealed a face that was so handsome it could make anyone jealous. It was Owen Parker. He had been passing by at just the right moment. Later he called campus security to handle the aftermath and insisted on escorting me back to my dorm. On the way he laughed and asked, "Nice moves, Junior. You've been practicing. That looked pretty good." "Santa Club rookie," I said, a little proud. "Ah, still a member of my club?" He smiled even more widely. "I'm the president, Owen Parker. From now on, during our training, I'll personally guide you." And just like that we became familiar with each other. He really did personally guide me. During training, he was incredibly strict with me, but outside of that, he treated me like an older brother, always looking out for me. We trained together, discussed cases together, and ate meals together in the cafeteria. With him, I felt easy and happy. I could tell that his gaze toward me was different from how he looked at others. And I didn't seem to mind. After the phone call with Jason Miller during the Chinese New Year, my mood wasn't affected at all. I continued to happily make dumplings and watch the Spring Festival Gala. When the clock struck midnight, Owen Parker secretly handed me a red envelope. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. "New Year's money," he said, his eyes curved into a smile. "I wish you, our Rachel Jr., a safe, happy, and powerful new year." The envelope was thin and there didn't seem to be money inside. I opened it and found a photo one of me performing a spinning kick during the lasts in a club training session. I looked cool and fierce. On the back of the photo were some graceful words. "To my most admired comrade Rachel Foster. May we walk side by side." My face flushed instantly. My heart beat faster for reasons I couldn't quite explain. I looked up and met his bright, smiling eyes. The noise around us seemed to fade, leaving just the two of us. "Senior you, Rachel," he said, his smile fading and his expression growing serious and gentle. "I know it might be a bit soon to say this, but I don't want to miss the chance. I like you, not in a senior-junior way, but in a man-to-woman way. Would you give me a chance?" In the cafeteria, classmates cheered and wished each other a happy new year. But there I was, staring at the warm, sunny boy in front of me, listening to his sincere confession. The cold hospital room from my past life, Jason Miller's indifferent back, and Madeline Stone's smug smile. All the painful memories seemed to be wiped away in that moment, as if a powerful light had driven them out. I took a deep breath and smiled brightly. "Owen Parker, I'm happy to walk side by side with you. But first, you have to promise me no being so strict with me during training anymore." Owen Parker froze for a second, then joyfully lifted me off the ground and spun me around. "Yes, ma'am, my girlfriend." The surrounding students erupted in applause and cheers. The new year truly began. With hope, warmth, and love. Being with Owen Parker was like adding a spoonful of honey to an already powerful life. The training was still tough, and I still got bruised all over from the combat classes, but every time I was exhausted and about to collapse, I would look up and meet his smiling eyes, or receive an energy bar he'd sneakily handed me. When I returned to my dorm after late-night study sessions, he would always coincidentally walk me back. The streetlights stretched our shadows long, and we would argue about a case, or share embarrassing childhood stories that would make us laugh so hard we could scare the birds off the trees. I almost completely forgot about the troubles from my past life, until the summer break in our third year. According to the timeline from my past life, this summer, Jason Miller would come to Beijing for a joint university exercise, and Madeline Stone would come as well, participating as a core member of their school's cultural group. At one of the social events they would accidentally meet and start their so-called fate. Although I had taken measures to avoid this, when I heard the news, a small prick of tension stirred in my chest. It wasn't longing, it was caution. I knew that as long as I was in the same time and space as Jason Miller, trouble could still find me. "What are your plans for the summer?" Owen Parker asked while helping me adjust mice in a protective gear. "Are you staying at school or going home?" I took the gear from him, thinking for a moment. Going home meant I might run into Jason Miller since he'd be on break too. Though I would try to avoid him, it was a small town, so the chances of running into him were still there. Staying at school. Beijing was so big, the chances of bumping into them would be much lower. "I'm thinking of staying at school and looking for an internship to gain some experience," I said. Owen Parker's eyes lit up. "Coincidentally, I've got a contact at the city's criminal investigation team, and they're looking for a partner. Interested?" This was a golden opportunity. An internship with the criminal investigation team would not only let me learn something real, but it also meant I could be with Owen Parker and avoid all potential risks. Absolutely interested. I immediately nodded. So, as soon as the summer break started, we moved into the temporary dorms arranged by the Criminal Investigation Unit and began our intense internship life, working from 7 in the morning until 9 at night. Our mentor, Aaron Collins, was an experienced detective with a stern face, but he was a good teacher. He was meticulous when it came to everything, from crime scene investigations to making notes. The days were busy but fulfilling, and I almost managed to put my weariness out of my mind. That is, until one afternoon after finishing a burglary investigation with Owen Parker, we were waiting for a red light at an intersection in the police car. I absently looked out the window and noticed a nice-looking Western restaurant across the street. At a window-side table, there was a couple. The man was dressed casually but sat with impeccable posture, his sharp profile unmistakable Jason Miller. Across from him sat a girl in a white dress, long hair flowing, looking delicate and sweet, smiling as she said something. It was Madeline Stone. A cold weight sank in my chest. Of all the people, why did I have to run into them here? And it looked like they knew each other quite well. Everything about them seemed relaxed and comfortable. The light turned green and the police car started moving. As the car passed by the restaurant, Jason Miller seemed to sense something, and turned to look out the window. Our eyes met, unexpectedly, through the glass. His face flashed with shock, his pupils dilating as he clearly hadn't expected to see me in this way, in this place. He instinctively started to stand up. I, however, merely glanced at him. My gaze lingered on him and Madeline Stone for less than a second before I nonchalantly looked away, as if they were just two strangers of no significance. I even turned to Owen Parker beside me, smiling naturally, and said something to him. The police car accelerated, leaving that shocked face and Madeline Stone behind. "What were you looking at?" Owen Parker followed my gaze, seeing only the traffic. "Nothing. Just two annoying flies," I shrugged casually, my tone light. Owen Parker smiled, not thinking much of it, and with a quick move, tucked a damp strand of hair behind my ear. "You must be tired. I'll buy you some watermelon on the way back." "Sure, get the sweetest one." I grinned. The slight stir in my heart was quickly soothed by Owen Parker's smile. "See, Jason Miller, in this life, you and your Madeline Flower are no more than bothersome flies to me. I thought that brief glance through the window would be the final chapter in this twisted fate. But Jason Miller's obsession turned out to be more persistent than I expected. 2 days later in the evening, after finishing up at the station, I was about to head to a nearby supermarket when I turned a corner and found someone standing in my way. It was Jason Miller. He was in military uniform, his face tense, bloodshot eyes suggesting he'd been sleepless for several days. "Rachel," he said hoarsely, his voice thick with suppressed emotion. "We need to talk." I stopped, my expression unreadable as I looked at him. "Jason Miller, are we that close? If I remember correctly, I made myself pretty clear back in senior year." Jason Miller. His face twitched at the name as if it stung him. He took a step forward, pressing, "Rachel, do you really have to be like this? I know you saw us that day at the restaurant. It's not what you think. She's Madeline Stone, an art officer from our sister school in the joint exercise. We were just having dinner, discussing work." Ah, here comes the explanation. In my past life he never bothered to be this patient with me. It seems that what's lost never stops stirring. "Jason Miller, who you eat with, or what work you discuss has nothing to do with me, and you don't need to explain it to me," I said coolly, attempting to walk around him. But he grabbed my wrist with surprising force, nearly shocking me. "Rachel Foster, look at me. Tell me why have you suddenly changed? Is it because I didn't agree with your university choices, or is it because of that police officer?" The moment he mentioned Owen Parker, my expression turned cold, and I forcefully yanked my hand away from his grip. "Let go of me, Jason Miller, show some respect." "Respect?" he sneered, eyes filled with an anger and pain I didn't understand. "How am I supposed to respect you? After all these years, you just throw it all away. Then you run off to Beijing hanging out with another man. You're standing there in that police uniform with him by your side. Have you even thought about how that makes me feel?" Listen to that, as if he had every right to accuse me, as if I was the one who had been unfaithful. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly, my anger only growing. "Your feelings? Jason Miller, what makes you think you have the right to ask about my feelings? Childhood sweethearts? Don't make me laugh. That bond you talk about was long destroyed by you and me. Boyfriend? Husband? Do you even deserve it?" I took a deep breath. Every word I spoke was deliberate, striking him like a hammer. "Let me tell you why. Because I see you for who you really are, Jason Miller. You are not the right man for me. Being with you would only ruin me." So I cut my losses and walked away. I got into the university I wanted, and I'm walking my own path, meeting men who truly respect me, who appreciate me, who see me as both a comrade and a lover. This has nothing to do with you, and I want you to stay out of my life from now on. Don't show up and ruin my peace anymore, understand? Jason Miller's face paled, his expression frozen in disbelief as if he was meeting me for the first time. His eyes filled with incredulity and a deep sense of rejection. Not the right person. No good ending. He muttered to himself, then suddenly looked up, his eyes sharp. "You know something, don't you? The cancer you mentioned back in senior year, Madeline Stone. And now." My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't show it. "I don't know anything. All I know is that some paths don't align. Jason Miller, you have your golden road, and I have my narrow bridge. Don't keep bothering me, it's getting ugly." I didn't look at his devastated face again as I turned and walked away. This time he didn't follow. As I walked farther, I could still feel the heat of his gaze, full of pain and confusion, staring at my back. But so what? My heart had already become as solid as a rock. The day my internship ended, Aaron Collins patted Owen Parker and me on the shoulders, clearly pleased. "You two kids aren't bad, you've got grit and a thirst for knowledge. If you want to join us after graduation, you're welcome here." This was a high compliment. We thanked Aaron Collins and, with a sense of fulfillment and sunburned skin, headed back to school. Senior year came fast, with a faster pace than ever. Graduation projects, fitness assessments, job choices, the pressure was no small thing. But Owen Parker and I kept each other motivated and supported each other, and it felt rewarding. During this time, I heard from classmates back home that Jason Miller and Madeline Stone were probably together now, though things didn't seem to be going smoothly. But I didn't care enough to ask for details. One time, my mom called and casually mentioned Rachel. Jason's mom told me a few days ago that Jason isn't doing too well. His love life's a bit rocky. She keeps asking about you. I cut her off immediately. Mom, whether his love life is going well or not has nothing to do with me. I don't have anything to do with him anymore. Please, don't bring him up again. My boyfriend might not like it. There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a laugh. Ah, all right, I won't mention it anymore. My daughter's all grown up now, knows what she wants. As long as you're happy. When are you bringing Owen home to meet us? Whenever he's on break, I laughed and hung up. See? Time really is the best medicine. Even my parents had long accepted that Jason Miller was a thing of the past. Soon, graduation season arrived. Owen Parker and I both passed our assessments with flying colors. I chose to join the Criminal Investigation Unit at a district police station in Beijing, while he, with his outstanding grades and performance, was selected for a prestigious department within the Ministry of Public Security. On graduation day, the sun was shining brightly. I was in my police uniform and graduation gown, taking tons of photos with Owen Parker in front of the university gates. He had his arm around my shoulders, his smile brighter than the sun. Rachel Foster, he said, his tone serious. For the road ahead, I look forward to your guidance as we continue to fight side by side. I smiled back at him, my heart full of warmth and peace. Same to you, Owen Parker. We were still laughing when my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar local number. I hesitated for a moment before picking up. Hello? There was a pause on the other end, and then came a voice I had almost forgotten, hoarse and tired. Rachel. It's me, Jason Miller. How does he still have my number? I frowned, glancing at Owen Parker instinctively. He noticed my change in expression and silently asked with his eyes. I shook my head at him and spoke coldly into the phone. Jason Miller, I thought we had nothing left to say. I'm getting married, he suddenly said, his voice devoid of any joy, almost resigned. To Madeline Stone. My heart was as still as water. If anything, I felt a bit like laughing. Of course, history had its own patterns. But this time I was no longer the tragic side character in their story. Oh, congratulations. My tone was as flat as if I was commenting on the weather. It seemed my reaction stunned him. He probably thought I'd be angry, regretful, or at least show some kind of emotion. But unfortunately, he was disappointed. Rachel, he paused, and there was a rare hint of pleading in his voice, something I'd never heard from him before. Can I see you? Just once. There are some things I want to say to you before the wedding. I looked at Owen Parker beside me, who was smiling and tightly holding my hand, and then spoke clearly, undecisively into the phone. There's no need. Jason Miller, I wish you happiness in your marriage. But as for us, we ended a long time ago. Goodbye. No, actually, never again. With that, I hung up decisively and blocked the number once again. Who was that? Owen Parker asked. Someone irrelevant. I hooked my arm around his, resting my head on his strong shoulder, taking a deep breath. Let's go, comrade. Let's celebrate our graduation. Dinner's on me. Sounds good. Owen Parker grinned and hugged me tighter, not asking any more questions. The sunlight bathed us, stretching our shadows long and intertwining them together. The past seemed like a distant, blurry nightmare. And in this moment, with my hand in his, I knew my real new life had just begun. The road ahead is still long, but this time I have my script firmly in hand, and the right person by my side. Every step I take will surely lead toward the light.